Hello everyone, I'm Ariana and welcome to my first YouTube video. In this one I'm going to be doing an August wrap-up, so just talking about all of the books that I read this past month and my thoughts on all of them and whether or not I would recommend them. So let's get started. So the first book that I read this month, I actually don't have the copy with me because I already had to return it to the library, but that book is Homecoming by Kate Morton. And so this book is kind of a dual time point. I don't know if that's quite the right wording for that, but it's about these murders that have occurred in this small town in Australia. I don't know, maybe if it was like 80 or 70 years ago or something like that. And basically this mom and I think it was 3 of her children were found on the bank of this river, all dead, just looking like they're sleeping. And then there was a baby that is now missing. And so that crime has kind of been decided as like a murder-suicide. They think that the mom was depressed and poisoned herself and her children, but so it's kind of a closed case, but there's still some questions out there about what really happened. There's still like kind of a lot of open questions there. And then at the same time, you're hearing this more present day point of view from a girl named, Nora. So Nora lives in London and she gets a call, so she grew up in Australia, and she gets a call that her grandma, who still lives in Australia and kind of raised her, just had like a really bad fall and is not doing well, and that she needs to come back to Australia to come and be with her grandma. So she comes back and she finds out that her grandma's in a lot worse of a state than she thought. She is not able to really communicate with Nora. She mutters like a few things to her in the hospital that seem very weird. Nora's like not really sure what she's talking about. She's very worried that someone's gonna take away her baby, and Nora's just like, that doesn't really make sense with what I know about like my mom and how you had my mom. And at the same time she starts talking to people in her grandma's life and is just finding out more and more kind of weird things that have been going on lately. And so she starts to kind of uncover more about her grandma's past and finds out how that was in some ways tied to this murder that happened 70 or so years ago. And so kind of learning more about this murder, more about her grandma's past. It was really, really good. I really liked it. It's a literary fiction book overall, I would say, but then it also has this kind of like murder mystery element, which isn't like the entire book, but I liked that mystery element was still going on. So it was very enticing to keep reading, but also just very, very well written, and overall I gave this book 4.5 stars. And then the next book that I read, was called On a Quiet Street, and this is by Serafina Novaglass. And so On a Quiet Street, this book I read I listened to the audiobook version of it. I really love to listen to thrillers as audiobooks because I am able to really like keep paying attention. If it's more of like a romance or literary fiction audiobook, sometimes my mind will wander, but thrillers I'm usually able to pay attention pretty well. So On a Quiet Street is about these 3 women that are living in this town on the Oregon coast. So it's kind of one of those like housewife type drama thriller books, which I usually enjoyed, so that's the reason I decided to listen to this book. And so one of the women's name is Cora, and she is convinced that her husband is cheating on her. Another woman's name is Paige, and Paige's son was previously killed in a hit-and-run accident, and she is convinced that even though it was a closed case, just considered an accident, that it was actually more of a targeted crime, and is really set on figuring out what happened to her son. And then the third woman in this town is Georgia, and she's a little bit more mysterious. She's lived there for a little while, but no one ever sees her out and about, and they kind of find out that through her husband that she is afraid to leave the home, and she just really needs to stay within her kind of like yard and house to feel safe. And I think this book is like kind of hard to explain too much without giving anything away because there's constant like reveals and tiny plot twists throughout. But overall, these women are kind of looking out for and helping each other throughout this book. You're learning that, I already forgot her name, Georgia, there seems to be a little bit more to her story and why she is staying in her house, and both Paige and Cora really want to help her out, but also need some help with their own issues. So yeah, overall I enjoyed this book. I gave it 3 stars, I believe. Yeah, 3 stars. I think it falls under, I feel like a lot of thrillers fall under this category of like, it was a good book overall. I enjoyed it. If someone wanted like a quick, easy thriller read, I would recommend it, but it wasn't like a standout book. I overall was able to predict a lot of the plot twists. There were some that I didn't quite predict, but kind of followed along like what I thought overall would happen in the book. But yeah, it was enjoyable book. I feel like 3 stars for me is like enjoyable. I liked it, but not like blown away by this book. Probably wouldn't really think about it too much in the future. The next book that I read, I actually do have the actual paper copy of, and this was Brit Was Here. And this book I recently got I was visiting my boyfriend's family, and the library near them was having like a library book sale. So I think I got this book for like 50 cents from there, which was very exciting. And it's called Brit Was Here by Frederick Backman. And I got this book because this is the same author that wrote A Man Called Ove. And I had recently watched the movie adaptation of that, and I had really enjoyed it. So I decided to try out this book. This is about a woman called Brit Marie, and they never specifically say this in the book, I don't think, but to kind of describe her, she has some of the like stereotypical OCD type tendencies, I guess, where she needs everything a certain way. All of the like silverware needs to be put in a specific order. She needs her day to be run this certain way, doing the same thing every single day. And at the beginning of the book, it's revealed that she's left her husband. You're not like 100% sure why she's left her husband and kind of like deviated from her normal life that she's been living for the past 40 or so years. But she is going to this like jobs office to help find herself a job, because this whole time she's just been this housewife who takes care of the house, makes sure everything's perfectly clean. All of a sudden she's left her husband and needs to find a job. And so the way that she is, she's really annoying this jobs office lady and keeps showing up every single day saying she wants a job, but there's also a recession going on, so everyone wants jobs. Finally, this woman is so fed up with her and says, okay, fine, Brit Marie, I found you a job, but it's like just this temporary 3-week job in this small town called Borg. And basically they just need someone to help out with their rec center, kind of like run the rec center. So she goes out to this small town to help run the rec center, not really knowing what she's getting herself into. It's a small town in the middle of nowhere, and so she gets there and kind of immediately starts to get to know all the people in this town, and it's something that she's very uncomfortable with. They don't have all of the normal supplies she's used to having in her normal life. People are just what she considers very weird out there and not really what she wants, and deviating from her normal life. But she meets this group of children that are in love with soccer, and they kind of adopt her into their community and as someone to help support them through their soccer, because they don't have a coach, they don't have a soccer field. It's a pretty like low income, struggling little town. And so she starts to really bond with this community and the people in it. Overall, it was just like a very heartwarming book, and I overall enjoyed it. It took me a while to get through it because it wasn't the most like exciting read or anything like that, but it was a nice, relaxed book to read. So overall, I would recommend it. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was pretty good. Okay, this next book that I read is called Hello Stranger by Catherine Center, and this is a romance book overall, and it's about This woman named Sadie, and she is a portrait artist. That is her like full-time job, and she recently has been accepted or like declared a finalist in this portrait competition. And as being a finalist, she has to complete another portrait and enter it into like the finals competition to potentially win a monetary prize. And because she's a struggling artist, she really needs this prize. But then she has, I believe it's like a seizure, and ends up in the hospital and finds out she has this condition that's requiring her to get brain surgery, and wakes up and has facial blindness. And obviously as a portrait artist, this is not good news at all, especially with this upcoming competition. So this book is kind of about her navigating life with facial blindness, as well as also she meets these two men that she is very interested in. It's kind of a little bit of a love triangle romance. So yeah, this was a very good, light, fast read. Was it like a terrific book? Not really. I gave this one 3 stars. I would recommend it if you want a quick, fast, like beachy summer read. That is enjoyable for that. It, to me, was extremely predictable. I read the front cover and was like, I wonder if this is gonna happen. And that's what happened. And the whole time in the book I was like thinking that it seemed so obvious that that was gonna happen, so there must be some type of plot twist where I would be wrong, but that is indeed what happened. So yeah, good, quick, fast read. Nothing groundbreaking here. The next book that I read was The Grace Year. So I read The Grace Year by Kim Liggett. This book is about this kind of dystopian community. They're not clear about if this is supposed to be in the future, if this is supposed to be kind of like an alternate world, but in this, I believe it's called like their county. They live in Garner County, and it's believed in this county that once girls get their period, they kind of have this magic that's growing within them. And so when they turn 16, they are kind of banished from the town, or the county I guess, for a year, and have to go live in this tiny like encampment area for that entire year, and they're supposed to kind of like accept their magic and then get rid of their magic before they return to the town. And so the main character in this book, Tierney, she has just turned 16, and she is supposed to go off to do her grace year. And so that is what she does, but she's also like a little bit skeptical, maybe a little more questioning than any of the other girls, and what this experience really is. It's something that's like not really talked about in the town, so you don't know until you get there what you're going to experience. And yeah, it was a good book. I gave it 4 stars. I enjoyed it. It's a young adult book, which made it a very fast read. I think it would maybe be even more interesting if it was a young adult and like went a little farther in depth to things. But I definitely have seen it. I've seen it compared to Handmaid's Tale, and it totally has a similar type of feel. You're not really sure how much the people in this county really think that women have this magic they need to get rid of, or how much it's just the men that are telling the women this and controlling the women like this to kind of break them into being these like good housewives and everything when they come back from this experience. So it was a really interesting read to just hear about this community of women that are treated this way. Overall, gave it 4 stars. Felt like it could have gone a little bit more in depth, but I really liked it. The next book that I read was XIII by Steve Kavanaugh. This is a book that was recommended to me by one of my best friends, who had listened to it, and so I also listened to the audiobook of this. Another thriller book, and this is about, there's a trial going on where a woman and her security guard, I think it was her security guard, are both found dead, murdered in the woman's bed, and her husband is being tried for this murder. And at the same time, you're hearing the point of view of this, what you kind of start to find out is a serial killer, and he is actually the one that committed this crime of the wife and the security guard, but he's trying to kind of pin it on the husband. And one of the ways he's doing that is by getting on to the jury. So he's doing everything he can to ensure that he's on that jury so he can play a part in controlling what happens in this trial. So it's interesting because you're hearing about the trial, but you know that, you know, this man that's being convicted didn't do the crime, and you're kind of wondering, how are they going to get to accusing the actual serial killer of doing it, or is this man going to be wrongly accused? And you're hearing the point of view of, I think he's kind of like a consultant on the case that's helping to support this man that's being convicted, and he is starting to unearth some more about this serial killer and kind of connect this murder to past murders that have happened. But you need to find out if he's going to get this all worked out in time before this man gets convicted. So that was a good book. I gave it 4 stars. I think it was a little different than most of the stereotypical thriller books that I have read recently. It was enjoyable. They got in a couple really good twists in there. My only negative with that is I feel like sometimes to get in really good twists in thrillers, they have to do things that seem a little bit like, is this possible, or is this logical? Maybe not, but you got a good twist in, so I enjoyed it. Yeah, overall, very good book. The next book that I read was called 20 Years Later by Charlie Dawn Leah. And this is a book that I read on my Kindle, another thriller book. This was kind of just my month of thrillers, not really intentionally, but I guess I was just getting ready for the kind of Halloween season a little bit early. But yeah, this one was about this man that had been murdered, and this woman had been arrested for his murder, and I think that she was out on bail, so this is kind of giving you like the past tense, or what happened in the past. And as she was getting ready for the trial, she went to go visit her lawyer in the Twin Towers on 9/11, and so she was in there when like the first plane hit, and then she is just gone, assumed to be dead. So they basically, this case kind of gets closed because the woman that they were going to try for the murder is dead. And so we now flash forward to 20 years later, as the book's called, where this woman she has like her own like TV show that's kind of like a news station, and she lives in California, and she hears that they have discovered this new way to identify kind of like bone and teeth fragments from 9/11, which previously they could not figure out, but they find a new way to determine who these bones and teeth and everything belong to. And because she had been arrested for a murder, her DNA is in the system, and so they're able to find that they actually found one of her teeth in the wreckage from 9/11. And so this woman that's a kind of a reporter, she thinks this is really interesting because, you know, they have this whole new way of being able to identify victims that were always just assumed dead and never actually could like be confirmed because of all the wreckage that had occurred. And so she goes out there to report on this story, but then she quickly finds out about this woman's past, how she had been accused of murder. She meets the woman's sister, who is so convinced that she did not commit this murder. So she starts to kind of dig deeper into this. She also has her own little like personal side story going on, and then there's also a little romance element. So there's multiple things going on that all kind of connect in some ways. But she's trying to uncover, did this woman really commit this murder, or is her sister correct? Yeah, so I gave this one 4 stars. I enjoyed it. I thought it was just gonna kind of be one of those like cheaper thriller books when I started it, but I really liked it. I feel like there were definitely a couple points where they surprised me with some of the twists that happened. So I would definitely recommend this one as a good thriller. I read this one really fast and really enjoyed it. And then the next book that I read, my last thriller of the month, was Don't Let Her Stay by Nicholas Sanders. And this one I listened to as an audiobook. This one is about a woman and her husband and their new daughter that live in this small town outside of London. And the husband was previously married, so he has this daughter who kind of has been cut out from his life ever since he got remarried. The daughter did not want any part of knowing him. And all of a sudden he gets this letter that his daughter wants to come and stay with them. And so the main character, Joanna, she's really excited to meet his stepdaughter because she's never gotten to before and doesn't really know why the stepdaughter doesn't like her. And when the stepdaughter comes to visit, she quickly finds out that while she is very, very sweet to her dad, she is horrible to the stepmom. It's one of those books where the daughter is completely gaslighting the mother. She will tell the mother something, and so the mother will do something about that thing she was told, and then the daughter acts like she never told her that. She doesn't know what she's doing, kind of convincing her that she forgets everything and is just so confused. And so she starts to wonder a little bit, like, am I confused? And then even the husband is starting to really just believe the daughter and question everything that Joanne is saying. And so she's really kind of getting confused about, am I the one here that has a problem or what? Overall, I gave this book 2.5 stars. I gave it 2.5 because I did really want to know what was happening. I listened to it pretty fast because I wanted to get to the end, and I think that was a mix of I was interested to see what happened and if I was correct in my prediction, but I also could not stand the stepdaughter. I think gaslighting in general, I get so tired of it so quickly. And then the daughter, and the way that the audiobook narrator read the daughter's voice as the most like bratty voice was just so hard to get through. So overall, 2.5 stars. I wouldn't really recommend it for a thriller. I feel like even if you do want a cheap thriller out there, there are definitely better options like the ones that I described in this video. Okay, then last book that I read this month, I actually have my library book up still, and that is Between Two Moons by Isha Abdel Gawad, and I might have said that wrong. But this Between Two Moons is about it's a literary fiction book about these two Muslim twin girls that are growing up in New York City, and this is during the month of Ramadan, and I kind of don't know how to describe, it's not a normal book that has like a big climax and everything like that. It's very literary fiction. Things are just happening. They're just telling you about their summer and their month of Ramadan. I kind of think of it in my head as like a coming of age story, because these two girls have just graduated from high school. They're very excited for their first summer where they really consider themselves adults. However, right at the beginning of the book, their family gets a call that their brother, who is a few years older than them, is being released from prison. And he's been in prison for, I believe it was like 6 years. They don't exactly know why he was there, because when he was sent to prison, they were still kind of young. And so that's kind of ruining their idea of what they thought their summer would be like. All of a sudden, this brother, who was kind of always troubled in the past, is coming to live with them. They're not sure what that's going to look like. It was really a book that's like about their relationships between everyone. They're kind of forming their first ever real relationship with their brother. They're also just like learning more about their parents from this experience of having their brother back. They're also kind of questioning like what it means to them to be Muslim, I guess. Like how much on the scale of like a strict Muslim to someone that adopts a little bit more of like the traditional American life, I guess, like where they want to be on that spectrum. Yeah, I thought it was really, really good. I gave it 4.5 stars, and I would definitely recommend this book if you really like literary fiction books. If you don't like literary fiction books, you probably would not enjoy, because it can be a bit slow, but I felt like the writing was just so good that I still got through it pretty fast, because I was just getting like so sucked into the writing of it. I also just felt like it was really educational for someone that doesn't really know what Ramadan even is, to just learn about what actually happens in Ramadan and what it means to them. And yeah, I really enjoyed this book. Definitely recommend. And so yeah, this is the last book that I read this month. So overall in the month of August, I read 9 books. 6 of those were the physical copies of books, and then 3 of those I listened to the audiobook of. I found a lot of good reads this month. No 5-star reads, but some very close 4.5 stars. I also read a ton of thrillers, which usually are not 5 stars for me anyway, but were still very enjoyable. But I'm hoping in the month of September to maybe take a little bit of a break from those thrillers, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, thanks for watching.